saw my reflection blink, but I hadn't moved. The bathroom mirror was fogged from the shower, and through the condensation, I watched my own face stare back at me with eyes that weren't quite right, eyes that were watching me the way a predator watches prey. That was 3 months ago. I haven't looked in a mirror since. There are objects in our homes we trust without question. Light switches, door handles, mirrors. We pass them every day, barely noticing they're there. But what happens when something you've trusted your entire life stops following the rules? What happens when your reflection decides it doesn't want to copy you anymore? Tonight, I'm sharing 3 true stories, 3 people who learned that mirrors don't just reflect what's in front of them. Sometimes they reflect something else, something that's been waiting on the other side, watching, learning, and when the moment is right, crossing over. These accounts come from police reports, psychiatric evaluations, and one personal testimony that was only shared once before being sealed away. Names have been changed, locations obscured, but the events, those remain exactly as they happened. Before the reflection starts moving on its own, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because here at Forbidden Visions, every story leaves a different shadow on those who listen. And trust me, after tonight, you'll think twice before checking your reflection in the dark. Let's begin with Sarah. Sarah Mitchell was 24 years old, living alone in a studio apartment in the Pacific Northwest. She worked remotely as a graphic designer, which meant she spent most of her time at home, surrounded by screens and silence, the kind of silence that makes you notice things you wouldn't normally hear. The hum of the refrigerator, the settling of old wood, the almost imperceptible sound of your own breathing. Her apartment was small but comfortable. One main room that served as bedroom, living room, and office, a tiny kitchen, a bathroom with a mirror that stretched across the entire wall above the sink, making the cramped space feel larger than it was. Sarah had lived there for 8 months when things started to change. It began subtly, so subtly she didn't notice at first. She'd brush her teeth in the morning and catch movement in her peripheral vision, just a flicker, a shadow passing behind her reflection where nothing should be. She'd turn around, toothbrush still in her mouth, and find the bathroom empty. Just her, just the white tiles and the shower curtain and the perpetual drip from the faucet she kept meaning to fix. She convinced herself it was fatigue. Too many late nights finishing client projects, staring at screens until her eyes burned and her head pounded. Shadows play tricks when you're tired. Everyone knows that. But then came the morning she noticed her reflection was wearing different clothes. She stood in front of the mirror, dressed in her usual work-from-home uniform, an oversized gray sweater and black leggings. But in the mirror, her reflection wore a white dress, something old-fashioned, with long sleeves and a high collar, the kind of dress you'd see in a photograph from a century ago. Sarah blinked. The reflection blinked back, and now the reflection wore the gray sweater again. She stood there for a long moment, heart hammering against her ribs, convinced she was losing her mind. Stress, that's all it was. Work, stress, too much coffee, not enough sleep. She splashed cold water on her face, kept her eyes closed while she did it, and when she opened them again, everything was normal. For 3 days, nothing happened. She almost forgot about it. Then she woke up at 3:17 in the morning to the sound of running water. The bathroom light was on, spilling out from under the door, a thin line of yellow against the darkness of her studio. She hadn't left it on. She never left lights on at night. The electric bill was too high, and she was careful about things like that. Sarah lay in bed, listening. The water ran, steady, constant, like someone was washing their hands or filling the sink, or just standing there, letting it pour over their fingers while they stared at something in the mirror. She should have stayed in bed. Looking back, she knows that now. Should have pulled the covers over her head and waited for morning. But there's something about the familiar that makes us careless. It was just her apartment, just her bathroom, just water running. She got up, crossed the cold floor in bare feet, reached for the bathroom door handle. It was ice cold, not just cool from the night air, ice cold. The kind of cold that stings your palm and makes you pull back instinctively. She hesitated. The water was still running. Sarah turned the handle. The bathroom was empty. The faucet ran at full blast, water pouring into the sink, steam rising because the hot water had been running long enough to heat up. But there was no one there. She turned off the faucet. The silence that followed was worse than the sound, because in that silence, she heard breathing, not her own, someone else's, coming from behind her. She spun around. The bathroom was still empty, but in the mirror, in the fogged glass above the sink, someone had written 2 words with their finger. "Turn around." Sarah ran. She didn't turn off the light, didn't close the door, just ran back to her bed and sat there, knees pulled to her chest, staring at that line of yellow light under the bathroom door, waiting for something to emerge. Nothing did. When morning came, the words were gone. The mirror was clear. Everything looked normal. But Sarah knew better. She started avoiding the bathroom mirror, would brush her teeth looking down at the sink, would wash her face with her eyes closed, would shower with the shower curtain pulled tight, never glancing at the mirror through the gap. It didn't matter, because the mirror didn't need her to look at it. It could see her just fine. She started noticing her reflection appearing in other places, in the black screen of her turned-off laptop, in the window at night when the curtains were open, in the back of a spoon while she ate cereal, her face stretched and distorted, but somehow more detailed than it should be. And every time she caught a glimpse, her reflection was doing something she wasn't doing, smiling when Sarah's face was neutral, turning its head when Sarah stood perfectly still, mouthing words Sarah couldn't hear. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Sarah was working late, finishing a logo design that was due the next morning. The apartment was dark, except for the glow of her laptop screen. She'd been working for hours, hyper-focused, barely aware of her surroundings. She reached for her coffee mug. Her hand passed through something cold, something that felt like fingers. She jerked back, knocking the mug over, coffee spilling across her desk, and in the black screen of her laptop, now blank from the sudden movement, she saw her reflection standing behind her, not sitting at the desk like Sarah was, standing directly behind her chair, close enough to touch, close enough to reach out and place a hand on Sarah's shoulder. Sarah felt pressure on her left shoulder, cold, heavy, real. She screamed and spun around. Nothing was there. But when she looked back at the laptop screen, the reflection smiled. Sarah packed a bag that night and left, stayed with a friend, didn't go back to the apartment for a week. When she finally returned, accompanied by her friend and 2 maintenance workers from the building, everything was normal. No messages on mirrors, no strange reflections, just a dusty apartment that smelled like stale coffee and abandonment. She convinced herself it was over. She was wrong, because 3 days after moving back, she woke up to find photographs scattered across her floor, dozens of them, printed photos that she didn't remember taking, photos of herself sleeping, eating, working, showering, all taken from angles that suggested the photographer had been standing in impossible places, inside her laptop screen, inside her bathroom mirror, inside her bedroom window. Sarah moved out the next day. She's been living with her parents for the past 8 months. She's in therapy now, diagnosed with severe anxiety and paranoid delusions brought on by isolation and work stress. The psychiatrist prescribed medication, told her the mind can create very convincing hallucinations when it's under pressure. But Sarah kept one of those photographs, the one that showed her sleeping in bed, taken from the perspective of someone standing at the foot of her mattress. Except in the photograph, reflected in the black screen of her laptop on the nightstand, you can see the photographer. It's Sarah, but not quite. The smile is wrong, the eyes are wrong, and behind that, reflected Sarah, in the darkness of the screen, you can just barely make out other figures, dozens of them, all standing perfectly still, all watching, all wearing white dresses with high collars and long sleeves. Sarah doesn't own a white dress. She never has. Drop a comment below if you've ever seen something in a mirror that shouldn't have been there. Because Sarah's story, as disturbing as it is, isn't unique. It's not even the worst one. Let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus Chen was a night security guard at an office building in downtown Chicago. 32 years old, divorced, no kids. He worked the graveyard shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., walking the empty halls of a 15-story building that housed various corporate offices, law firms, and a dental practice on the ground floor. It was a good job, quiet, paid well. The building was modern, built in the late 90s, all glass and steel and polished floors that reflected everything, mirrors in every bathroom, reflective surfaces on every wall. Even the elevator doors were polished to a mirror shine. Marcus had worked there for 3 years when the dental practice closed down. The company went bankrupt. Sudden, unexpected. One day there were patients coming and going. The next day, the space was empty. Dental chairs still in place, posters of perfect teeth still on the walls, and mirrors. So many mirrors, the kind dentists use to see into your mouth at impossible angles. The space was supposed to be cleared out, but corporate bureaucracy moved slow. So, for 6 weeks, Marcus walked past that empty dental office every night, glancing through the dark windows at the abandoned equipment inside. He started noticing the mirrors were never quite dark. Even with all the lights off in the dental office, the mirrors seemed to catch light from somewhere, a faint glow, like moonlight, except there were no windows that faced the moon. The building's interior hallway didn't have exterior windows. Marcus told himself it was light from the hallway reflecting at odd angles, but he started walking faster when he passed that office. Then came the night he heard drilling. It was 2:47 a.m. Marcus was doing his third round of the building, checking doors, making sure everything was locked and secure. When he reached the first floor hallway, he heard it, the high-pitched whine of a dental drill coming from inside the closed office. He stopped walking. The sound was unmistakable, that specific frequency that makes your teeth hurt just hearing it, the sound every person dreads when they sit in a dentist's chair. But the office was empty, had been empty for 6 weeks. The power had been shut off. Marcus stood in the hallway, flashlight in hand, staring at the dark windows of the dental office. The drilling continued, steady, mechanical, punctuated by brief pauses like someone was working methodically, moving from tooth to tooth. He should have called the police. Instead, he walked up to the door. It was locked. Of course, it was locked. He'd checked it himself earlier that night. But through the window, in the darkness of the office, he could see one of the mirrors glowing, the large circular mirror on an adjustable arm, the kind dentists swing around to show patients their teeth. It was glowing with a pale blue light, and in that mirror, he saw someone sitting in the dental chair, a patient. Marcus pressed his face closer to the window, trying to see better. The patient's mouth was open. Someone was leaning over them, working. The drill whined. The patient didn't move, didn't flinch, just sat there, perfectly still, while someone worked on their teeth. Marcus knocked on the window. The drilling stopped. The person leaning over the patient straightened up, turned toward the window, toward Marcus. It was Marcus. His own face stared back at him through the darkness. Same security uniform, same flashlight, same expression of confusion and fear. But this Marcus was inside the locked office, and he was smiling. Marcus stumbled backward. When he looked again, the office was dark. No glowing mirror, no patient, no other version of himself, just empty darkness and abandoned equipment. Marcus didn't report it, didn't tell his supervisor, convinced himself it was a hallucination, maybe carbon monoxide. Old buildings sometimes had ventilation issues. That would explain it, would explain everything. He requested not to patrol the first floor anymore. His supervisor agreed. For 2 weeks, Marcus avoided that hallway entirely. Then he got a call on his radio at 3 a.m. His supervisor's voice crackled through. "Marcus, need you to check the first floor. Motion sensors going off in the dental office." Marcus's hands went cold. "Are you sure? Place is locked up tight. Sensors don't lie. Could be a malfunction, but we need it checked now." Marcus descended to the first floor, every step feeling heavier than the last. The hallway was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums. The motion sensors had triggered the emergency lights. The hallway was brighter than usual, fluorescent tubes humming overhead. When Marcus reached the dental office, the door was open. Not just unlocked, open. About 6 inches of space between the door and the frame. Darkness beyond. Marcus raised his flashlight. "Hello? Chicago PD is on the way. If someone's in there, come out now." He was lying. He hadn't called the police. No one answered, but he heard breathing, not from inside the office, from behind him. Marcus spun around. The hallway was empty, but in the polished, reflective surface of the elevator doors across from the dental office, he saw himself standing in the hallway, and behind his reflection, visible in the elevator door mirror, was the dental office. But it wasn't empty anymore. Every chair was occupied. Dozens of patients sitting perfectly still, mouths open, while figures in white coats moved between them, working, drilling, the sound just barely audible, like it was coming from very far away, or from another world, bleeding into this one. And all the patients were Marcus, every single one, different versions of him, some older, some younger, some wearing different clothes, but all of them Marcus, all of them staring at the hallway with empty eyes. Marcus ran. He didn't stop running until he reached his car in the parking garage, drove home, called in sick, stayed in his apartment for 3 days with all the mirrors covered with sheets. When he finally returned to work, he quit. His supervisor tried to talk him out of it. Good job. Hard to find. Benefits. Pension. Marcus didn't care. He told his supervisor there was something wrong with the dental office, something in the mirrors. His supervisor laughed, said isolation and night shifts can play tricks on the mind. But 2 weeks after Marcus quit, a new guard was hired. His name was David Ross. David lasted 5 nights. On the 6th night, he didn't show up for work. His supervisor called his phone. No answer. Went to his apartment. No one home. Filed a missing person report. David's car was found in the building's parking garage 3 days later. He was never found, but his security access card was discovered inside the locked dental office, lying on the floor beneath one of the mirrors. The dental office was sealed after that. Officially, due to structural concerns, the mirrors were removed. The space was gutted. New tenants moved in eventually, turned it into a coffee shop. Marcus doesn't go downtown anymore. He works at a warehouse now. Day shift. No mirrors, just boxes and concrete and fluorescent lights that don't reflect anything. But sometimes, late at night, when he's alone, he catches his reflection in his phone screen. And his reflection is wearing a security uniform, and there's a dental drill in his hand. Would you have stayed or run? Let me know in the comments, because our final story takes place in a location you visit every day, a location you trust, a location with mirrors everywhere, a place called home. The Rodriguez family moved into their new house on a Wednesday in September. Father, mother, and 7-year-old daughter named Emma. It was a beautiful house, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, hardwood floors, and a large backyard. The kind of house young families dream about, the kind of house that represents making it, building a life, putting down roots. The master bathroom had a peculiarity. 2 mirrors faced each other across the room, one above the sink, one on the wall opposite. When you stood between them, you created an infinite corridor of reflections, yourself repeated endlessly, getting smaller and darker with each iteration, stretching into a vanishing point. Emma was fascinated by it. She'd stand between the mirrors and wave at her reflections, watching the gesture ripple down the infinite line of Emma's stretching into the dark. Her parents thought it was cute, the way children find wonder in simple things adults have learned to ignore. Mrs. Rodriguez was the first to notice Emma talking to the mirrors. She'd walk past the bathroom and hear her daughter's voice, animated and cheerful, clearly conversing with someone, having full conversations, pausing as if listening to responses, laughing at jokes no one else could hear. "Who are you talking to, sweetheart?" Emma would turn, smile, and say, "The other Emmas." "The other Emmas? In the mirror? They're nice. They play with me." Mrs. Rodriguez smiled. Imaginary friends, perfectly normal for a 7-year-old adjusting to a new house, a new school, a new life. But as the weeks passed, Emma's conversations with the mirrors became more frequent and more disturbing. She started saying things like, "The Emmas don't like it when we turn off the lights," or "The Emmas want to come out and play in the house," or one night at dinner, completely unprompted, the Emmas say, "There are too many of them in there. They need more space." Her parents exchanged glances. Mr. Rodriguez, ever practical, decided the solution was simple. They'd cover one of the mirrors, break the infinite reflection effect. Problem solved. He hung a large decorative tapestry over the mirror opposite the sink. That night, Emma woke up screaming. Her parents rushed into her room to find her sitting up in bed, tears streaming down her face, pointing at her bedroom window. "They're mad. The Emmas are really mad. They don't want to be covered up." Mr. Rodriguez looked at the window. In the reflection of the dark glass, he saw his daughter's room, her bed, her toys, Emma sitting up, crying. But he didn't see himself, didn't see his wife, just Emma. And behind Emma, in the reflection, standing in the doorway of her room, were other children, dozens of them, all about Emma's age, all wearing the same pajamas Emma wore, all staring at him with expressions that didn't belong on a child's face. He blinked. The reflection was normal again. Just Emma, just his wife, just himself. "Bad dream," he said, though his voice shook. "Just a bad dream." The next morning, he removed the tapestry from the bathroom mirror. Things got worse after that. Emma started spending hours in the bathroom, just standing between the mirrors, not talking anymore, just staring. Her parents would call her name, and she wouldn't respond, would have to physically touch her shoulder to break whatever trance she'd fallen into. When they asked what she was doing, she'd say, "Counting." "Counting what?" "The Emmas, making sure they're all still there. They get upset if I don't count them." Mrs. Rodriguez called a child psychologist. The psychologist said Emma was likely processing stress through imaginative play. The move had been difficult. New environment, new school, new everything. Children create elaborate mental worlds to cope with change. It was normal. It would pass. But Emma started changing. She became quiet, withdrawn, would sit at dinner staring at her reflection in the kitchen window, food untouched on her plate. She stopped playing with her toys, stopped watching cartoons, just stood in the bathroom between the mirrors staring at her infinite reflections. And her parents started noticing something else. Emma's reflections didn't always match her movements perfectly. There'd be a delay, just a fraction of a second, like the reflections were copying her, but not quite in sync. Or sometimes the reflections would move when Emma was standing still. A head turn, a blink, a smile. When Emma's face was blank, Mr. Rodriguez wanted to remove the mirrors entirely. Mrs. Rodriguez said that would just make things worse. If the mirrors were removed, Emma would find other reflective surfaces, windows, screens, water. You can't remove every reflection from a house. They were both wrong, because the mirrors didn't need to be removed. The mirrors were about to solve the problem themselves. It happened on a Saturday morning. Mrs. Rodriguez woke up early, went to the kitchen to make coffee, passed the bathroom, and noticed the door was open. The light was on. Emma was standing between the mirrors, still in her pajamas, perfectly motionless. "Emma, honey, it's time for breakfast." Emma didn't respond. Mrs. Rodriguez walked closer. "Emma?" Emma turned her head, but her reflections didn't. The infinite line of Emmas in the mirrors remained facing forward, while the real Emma turned to look at her mother. Mrs. Rodriguez's blood went cold. "Emma, come here, right now." Emma smiled. "I'm not Emma," she said. Her voice was different, flatter, like someone doing a bad imitation of a child's voice. One of the other Emmas wanted to come out, so we switched. It's fair. We take turns. That's the game. Mrs. Rodriguez grabbed her daughter's arm. It was ice cold. She pulled Emma out of the bathroom, slammed the door shut, and called her husband. Mr. Rodriguez came running, still half asleep. Emma stood in the hallway, smiling that wrong smile, staring at the closed bathroom door. "She's in there now," Emma said. "The real Emma, The one you call Emma. She's in the mirrors now. She's number 743. That's where she is in line. Mr. Rodriguez opened the bathroom door. The mirrors were empty. No reflections at all. Not of Emma. Not of him. Not of anything. Just empty silver surfaces that reflected nothing. He waved his hand in front of the mirror. Nothing. It was like looking into a void. And from somewhere deep inside that void, they heard a child crying. Emma's voice, the real Emma, calling for her parents, getting farther away. Mr. Rodriguez punched the mirror. The glass shattered. Behind the broken glass was just a wall, drywall, and plaster. But the crying continued, coming from the other mirror now, the one above the sink. Mrs. Rodriguez grabbed a towel bar and swung it at the mirror. The glass exploded. Wall behind it, just wall. The crying stopped. The Emma standing in the hallway stopped smiling. "You broke them," she said, and her voice was filled with something that wasn't quite anger, wasn't quite sadness. It was hunger. "You broke the mirrors. Now we can't go back, and she can't come out. You trapped her. Give us our daughter back," Mr. Rodriguez said. The thing wearing Emma's face tilted its head. "I am your daughter. I've been in the mirrors since before Emma was born. Me and all the others. We've been waiting, watching, learning how to be Emma. We know everything about her, every memory, every fear, every dream. We're better at being Emma than Emma is. Where is our daughter?" Mrs. Rodriguez's voice broke. "In the mirrors, all 743 of her, every reflection she ever made, every time she looked at glass or water or anything that could catch her image, a piece of her stayed behind, built up, layer after layer, until there were enough pieces to make something whole, make something that could walk around, something that could leave." The thing that looked like Emma walked toward the shattered bathroom. "But now you broke the mirrors, so I guess I'll stay, and she'll stay where she is. Fair's fair." Mr. and Mrs. Rodriguez lived in that house for 3 more months. They removed every mirror, covered every window, turned off every screen, but the child living with them wasn't Emma. They knew it. She knew they knew, and she didn't care. She looked like Emma, sounded like Emma, knew everything Emma knew, but she was wrong in ways they couldn't articulate, in ways that made them wake up at night, hearts pounding, feeling like they were living with a stranger who was wearing their daughter's skin. They eventually moved away, put the house up for sale. A new family lives there now. They have a daughter about 7 years old. She loves the bathroom, loves standing between the mirrors that the new owners installed, loves talking to her reflections. Her parents think it's cute, the way children find wonder in simple things. But sometimes, late at night, they hear multiple voices coming from the bathroom. Children laughing, all in the same voice, all counting in unison. 744, 745, 746, and every night the number gets higher. If this story made you check over your shoulder, hit that like button and subscribe. Have you ever noticed your reflection do something you didn't do? Let me know in the comments below, because here at Forbidden Visions, the fear always comes back when you least expect it. The Rodriguez family tried therapy, tried priests, tried everything, but the thing wearing Emma's face is still walking around, still smiling, still counting, and somewhere in a place between reflections, in the infinite corridor that exists in the space between mirrors, the real Emma is still waiting, still crying, still hoping someone will find her, still looking for a way home. They say mirrors are portals. They say reflections are doorways. They say if you look long enough, deep enough, you'll see what's really on the other side. But But maybe the real question isn't what's on the other side of the mirror. Maybe the real question is, what happens when something on the other side decides it wants to be on this side? What happens when your reflection gets tired of copying you? What happens when it decides it would rather be you? Sleep well tonight, and tomorrow morning, when you look in the mirror to brush your teeth, pay attention. Pay very close attention, because if your reflection blinks when you don't, it might already be too late.